Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm really excited to talk about this. I used to think that culture was just cake and tacos. My firm's in Houston, and Taco Tuesday, everyone's happy, everything's great. Cakes on birthdays. But you know what? It's more to that than just tacos and cake. So I'm glad to see so many people realize this is important, because what I've realized is that besides staff and delegation and maintaining your growing and nurturing your team, operations and your tech, I feel like are some of the two biggest things that lawyers in general have a hard time with in growing their firms. So let's dive in, and this is a workshop, so we're going to have some exercises. It's a little bit different than the other CLE types. So law firm culture, managing people and shifting mindsets. Just a little bit about me. My firm, it's really small font. We should probably do something about that. But my firm is 15 years old next month, and I graduated during the Great Recession. So, it's been going strong for this last 15 years. I've been practicing 16 years. I'm an immigration attorney. We're a full-service firm in Houston, Texas. But one of the other things I've really focused on is law practice management. I didn't want to have to reinvent the wheel, have so many other people have to reinvent the wheel. And so I recently wrote my second book. It just came out recently called Power Up Your Practice. And I have a copy up here just to show you, but it came out last Monday. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you. And other than law practice management and immigration and advocacy, those are like my three big things I like to do. And I have a podcast called Power Up Your Practice. Okay, so I had an ambitious schedule, so we'll probably try to cover most of these topics, but I do want to give us some time to think and to reflect. And so we'll do that. Because, so many times you go to a conference and you're talked to, and then you see other people, you get ideas, but how often do you actually go and implement, right? And so that's why I like this workshop concept, because it gives you a little time to pause and to reflect in the moment about what you're doing. So I think what's really important is your team, and I have some slides about what's about staff and in general, managing people. How many of you think that you're really awesome at delegating? I don't see that many hands. I mean, okay, you have to raise them really high, and then you all can join me up here. No. Well, honestly, I think this is really where a lot of people can't get their firm off the ground, because they're like afraid of where to find them, how to keep them engaged, what to do, how to keep them busy enough, and how do you deal with all the taxes and the payment and all those types of things. How many of you were ever afraid of those types of things before you had your first hire? A few? Okay. How many people have staff in their firms besides themselves? Okay. A lot of you, right. And so that's what I've noticed through my many years of practice and consulting, is that a lot of people are afraid of that. And now with so much AI, it's like this whole question of what can be done with less time. Are they really working? Remote staff, all of these new questions. And I want to believe in everyone, the good in everyone, but at the same time, you should have some safeguards and some checking in. So if you're not going to be able to grow unless you let go. And a lot of us are control freaks, perfectionists, type A type of people. Anyone? No one's willing to admit it, right? And then while we were in law school, it sort of got a little bit more solidified in that sense. And so really, if we're going to grow, we're going to have to let go, and but we can't just say, oh, you breathe and you seem like you know how to do something, I'll give you this, No, there's a lot more to that. You have to make sure that you match the skill sets and the function. But if you catch yourself working a lot, I feel like sometimes I have a second shift at night getting through emails. I don't know if anybody feels like that. You really need to do a reflection of your time to see whether or not are you using your time as wisely as possible. So I want to mention that because so much about when you're hiring staff, it's not just like, oh, I'm overwhelmed and exhausted. I need someone to do this function. You really need to do a time audit. So that if we don't actually have enough time to do a time audit, but I think that's what we should all do as a homework assignment. I often tell people to assess 2 days, maybe a weekend day and a weekday, and to figure out where does your time go. And if once you analyze it, so you really have to do the exercise at some point, because otherwise you think, oh, I'm super productive every minute of the day. But really there could be something that could be completely automated and eliminated. And so you need to reevaluate that. Once you do that, then you can figure out how best to use your time or what you want to delegate. And the same thing goes for staff. You want them to audit their time as well, because they could be doing something ridiculously stupid. Like maybe they misunderstood a training with their, the case management, and they're not using a functionality that exists. I've heard about it. I've seen this happen. And really they could be consuming more time unnecessarily. Like we had set up our contracts recently, and I thought we were so amazing and we were able to do them really quickly. And I had someone audit it, and they're like, you're wasting like 10 or 15 minutes per contract, and it could be done in like 3 or 4 minutes or less. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just want to sort of scream, but you have to hold it in. And, but anyway, that could be possibly happening with your team. And the more your team grows over time, you need to be keeping an eye on that. So why do I mention that? Well, one, it helps you know when to hire, but it also affects your culture. When your culture needs to be, one of the things that we'd have at our firm is to always be evaluating how can we improve and what could we eliminate and automate. So for hiring, you're not going to be able to grow unless you hire, but you need to make sure you get the right people. So like I mentioned, I used to think that culture was just cake and tacos. And then what happened was I wasn't keeping a pulse of the culture, and someone else did it by default because there was a void. And then they sort of took went somewhere else with it, and it got a little toxic at some point. And then I had to sort of start all over again with my team. This was many years ago, but I don't know, has anyone ever seen that happen? There's even firms that or companies that have like chief culture officer or something like that. It sounds like a fun job. But really you have to evaluate I was exchange student, and I lived in about 6 countries. Culture is a lot of the unspoken rules of how people operate. Just like how we have operating systems and computers, well, how do we operate as a society? And it could be that don't tell the boss about a problem because they'll get upset. And so then everybody's sweeping all the problems underneath the rug until it's like a big, big, big problem. Or it could be, so-and-so's is the favorite of the boss or something. And so whatever they say goes. And then that gets propagated and everyone thinks that's true. It also could be everybody has to adapt to the new case management software, but Sandra, she's on the old system and we don't have to do anything. She gets to do the old system and we all work around what she wants to do. So those are the types of things that affect culture. And when you walk in, let's say you're walking in, are you walking in the first day, at the beginning of the day, are you huffing and puffing and because they feed off of that energy? Or are you calm, collected, maybe had your run or your walk and you're like, we've got this, it's all going to be good. Because just like kids, I've got an 11 and a 13-year-old, feed off of mirroring your energy and your image and your words and how you're handling things. Your staff does that too, even if nobody wants to admit that. They've told me this, so that's how I know. They tell you need to chill out a little bit sometimes. But anyway, they're great. So let's take a couple of minutes. How many of you have your vision statement with your firm up somewhere and you've thought it through? There's a handful. Okay, there's a good handful. Good stuff. Okay. Well, it's important to reevaluate them on a regular basis. So let's just take a minute and I'll go around asking people to share. what does your firm's vision statement identify the 3 core values you believe your firm stands for? So jot them down, what your vision statement is for your firm, or for 3 core values that help represent what you think your firm stands for. So let's also let's do a little reflection on whether your current workplace culture reflects these values. Do you think that there's an alignment? I mean, if you don't have it written down, you don't have your culture figured out, your vision figured out, then it's going to be hard for it to be aligned. So I didn't mean to get the spoiler there, but what do you think? Let's take a minute to think whether your current workplace reflects these values. Okay, let's close up. But thank you for being so interactive. Who wants to share to the group? I'm supposed to stay over here for the recording, so I can't walk the whole room. But who wants to share? Like, we didn't talk about anything? Okay, there we go. Yeah. Yes, you. I think the mic is coming.
Okay, so I was just discussing, I own a family law firm down in Alabama. And when I initially started out, there were just a couple of us. We had this kind of great, friendly office culture. Everybody was on the same vibe. As we've grown, obviously, it's necessitated hiring other employees, and it's hard to we have a quirky, casual office that gets things done, but to try and really find people that fit that dynamic and how to know whether or not they're going to fit in the hiring process.
Yeah, and that's really important. And one of the other things to think about when you're hiring is in Traction, they talk about the people analyzer, and there's the core values that you're looking for. And when you look at 2 resumes, for example, and they look equal, when you're interviewing, you want to make sure that you know what your core values are, which is why we did that first exercise, so that when you're interviewing, you're like, yes, they're a team player. Yes, they're going to go the extra mile, or yes, they're willing to be quirky with us, that type of thing. That's really important, because if somebody doesn't work with that culture, then it can create a shift, and pretty soon the culture that you originally want could disappear. Anybody else want to share what they just, yeah.
One thing we were talking about is just kind of meeting cadence with people, especially for those kind of maybe higher level, long-term goals kind of meetings. At our firm, we try to do at least a semi-annual, really formal review of what's been going on in the year and where they're tracking towards goals. But between those big meetings, having maybe a monthly or even bi-weekly, a set time to check in with them, because as we were discussing, it's hard to find time for that sort of thing. So if you can at least get the cadence going, make sure that is scheduled before anything else, I think that can play a big role towards making sure that people are aligned with your values. If they're unhappy with something, they have a chance to voice that, and you can address it among plenty of other things. But kind of figure out whatever that meeting cadence is can be tricky, because there is kind of too much at the same time, but at least having something in place.
You could pass it behind. That's important to schedule those important meetings on a regular basis, because then the next one, and then make sure you put an agenda to remind yourself what that's supposed to be. Yeah.
So I'm not a law firm. I'm a fractional CFO, but many of my clients are attorneys who are allergic to their numbers.
I think I know some of those people.
2 of our core values are that we are learners who teach, and that we adopt a growth mindset. And I want to thank you, because what you've helped me realize is I've been playing with AI for about a year, and my number 2, who's also in leadership, has been playing with AI even more than I. But you're making me realize I need to go home and tell the rest of my staff, you need to install I don't care which AI, just a free one, and you need to play with it at least 5 minutes a day, because that's how we learn and grow. So thank you for that. That was a very helpful insight.
Oh, great. Epiphanies are happening everywhere. Yes. Anyone else want to share? Okay. Well, you guys got quiet really quickly. One thing that I think is also important is how do you keep your culture going when you have a virtual or a hybrid team? How many people have a hybrid team of some sort? Okay, there's maybe half or more of you. So why don't we, that's a little hard, right? Especially if, how many in the hybrid team, how many of the team members like never physically come in the office ever? There's like five or six, or maybe more, there's more, but it's not as many as the people who originally raised their hand. And so, all of that is a part of keeping that in mind as well. Someone was asking me what I was going to say today last night, and he was like, how do you keep the culture between the hybrid and the virtual and the everyone? I was like, actually it can be a bit of a challenge, because we're having like an event with the in-person people. I guess, we try not to distinguish the difference between the virtual team who never come in the office versus those who do come in on a hybrid. But creating events or activities where in our meetings and other fun activities, we all did a lot of that during the pandemic, but then we sort of got a little lax because a lot of people came back in, and then we didn't think we had to, keep that going. I don't know if I'm just talking about myself. And then we've hired about 7 or 8 virtual assistants and we have some other team members in the US that are never come in the office. So I see them at conferences or something like that. But how do we keep the culture alive? And I think that's why you have to be very intentional. Just like a long time ago, I ran my law firm from Dubai, and I had an assistant in Houston. I had to over communicate a little bit because we weren't right in the same room or in the same vicinity. And this was all before the pandemic. And I think that's the same thing with the culture, is that you have to be more purposeful, and you have to be more thoughtful about it. And words matter. You're not calling people maybe something that might be interpreted as they're a different team member or something like that. In our firm, everyone, they were just team members and staff, even if they might be classified as a contractor or virtual assistant or something like that. So, but that's a whole nother topic about how to keep that going, because we've got we have a lot to cover in just 1 hour, especially when we have our time to talk. So it's important to protect that culture, know what it is, read about it, talk to other firms and businesses. I mean, honestly, I get a lot of my inspiration from interacting with other businesses that I'm hiring, or when I'm traveling and I'm thinking, that was an interesting interaction I had with that service or that company. One other thing you can do is that once you have your core values figured out, you can have a reward, like was it the Dundee Awards or something like that? But you can do it for like most team member, team oriented, or going the extra mile or something like. So you can reinforce the positive of what you're trying to grow in the firm, and then you can do that on a regular basis. There's so much fun you can do with like gamification and encouraging the behavior you want. Like even this whole scavenger hunt is a gamification, right? We're running around doing the QR codes to get swag, and they're having us go to certain places that they want us to go to. It's brilliant. And so gamification is a way you can have fun in the workplace to create a culture that you want to have. And also with the awards and other different ways you can do that. And just being grateful and thoughtful about your team, because they're working really hard for the firm, and it can be easy to just like, oh, well, that's their job, they should do that, right? But no, you need to thank them and reward them, and then that's also going to help create that culture that you want to see. But of course, every culture is a little different, but like we've had examples of about having it written down, reinforcing it, reevaluating it are all very important. And somebody mentioned something about reducing the turnover. Well, we haven't even really talked about why culture is so important, but one of them is to reduce turnover and to have that retention. Because, I mean, I don't have the number memorized, but it's like a crazy number if you have to hire somebody or if you lose somebody. It's really cost prohibitive, but it's also very wasteful because somebody has to train. There's that whole probationary period, or the little training wheels for a while. The person can't do the job fully. So you want to make sure that you create a community. You have like people who can mentor. You can cross-train and upskill, giving feedback. I think having those reviews on a regular basis. How many of your firms have a review on a regular basis with the staff members? Okay. It's about half, I think, of the people here. In our firm, we do one every quarter when they start, and then every 6 months after that. Honestly, it's really a point to sort of like the meetings and having them set. It's about making intentional of that conversation. Especially when I started, I was like, okay, you're working fine, that's great. Why do we have to have a meeting about this? But then I realized it's important to be able to check in. And I use that as an opportunity to figure out how could we do things better. There could be something that's bothering them that they never felt like they could say. One of the other things, trying to encourage everyone to be supportive and not having that environment where, oh, you can't ask this question, or don't ask a dumb question, or you're going to get in trouble for that. So those are other things that happen when you've been running your firm for a while. You might get disconnected with how people perceive the firm. So it's important also to be monitoring if people are working too much, overtime, or too much, is maybe that means either somebody's doing something inefficiently, or you need to hire someone because they're going to burn out. Or if they're doing a case that's very, like in immigration, we have a lot of trauma type of cases. If they're being burnt out because they're doing too much asylum work or removal. So keeping tabs on that. And when you're assigning cases or work, making sure that they enjoy what they're doing. Compensation is important as a part of the culture as well. And I think that, all the different perks, sometimes the perks that people want is more than just the money. They want to be able to work from home, or they want to be able to bring their dog to work, or whatever it may be. Because how often can they find a place that'll let them do that? I mean, I don't know about you, but like after we worked remotely for so long during the pandemic, I mean, I really couldn't I don't know. I think some firms are doing this. They're saying, everybody come back in, but it's worked. So we still keep the hybrid schedule that we had during the pandemic. And I think that if I didn't have that, I think I'd have a harder time retaining talent. And so those are just some things to consider. And being aware of what people enjoy and what attracts them. Other benefits, I mean, of course, a lot of those are like the usual suspects, but it could be other things. I mean, okay, you can have cake and tacos, okay? You can have cake and tacos. It's just, you can't, that's not all of it, right? That's a piece of the action. And one of the things we like to do is have a potluck lunch at our office. We have a cute little 1940s bungalow in the Heights of Houston, and we have a full kitchen, and so we can get around the conference room table, the kitchen, and have like our little bonding lunch once a month, and these are and celebrating birthdays, whether or not the person's working in the U.S. or not, wherever they are, making them feel special. So there's a lot of those different aspects of benefits. I think the other thing that keeps really good staff around is if they know where they're going within the firm. And a lot of times, if they see a ceiling and there's no way up or no way for growth, you're going to lose the good people. And so maybe you can find creative ways to either cross-train them, teach them something else, find a way for them to grow with the firm. But those are some things that I've noticed, making sure that there's a way for them to grow in the firm. And, sometimes I remember not wanting to ask the staff, like, things because I was afraid they were going to ask for something I couldn't give them. But I think it's probably better to ask and get that feedback and see what you can do, because I think they're going to appreciate the fact that you're asking and that you're trying to create a better environment for them. And, when you have people stay around for more years, especially in this economy and life and generations of staff, we have, it's so amazing because that institutional knowledge continues when you don't have that turnover. I had a lot of turnover in the beginning because I didn't know what I was doing. And then when I figured that out, then I had more longevity with the team members. It's been a beautiful thing. And then they help me keep everything going. The reviews, that's what I was mentioning. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, and it doesn't always mean you get a raise. I have to make sure they know that. But it's really a good chance to sit down and have a conversation. And we have a form that they fill out, and their supervisor goes over it. And so I try to bring as much formality in that respect. But then when I'm actually talking with them, sometimes we'll go to a lunch or we'll just have a casual conversation going through that review. But I think that it's been really invaluable, and it helps you also know what they enjoy about the job, what they might not like about it, how we can improve. I just know that I'm a pretty on-the-go type of person, so being able to have these sit-down moments are really great for me, and I think it helps us retain the staff we want to have. So nobody wants to talk about this. Who's ever fired somebody, right? It's not the funnest thing in life, and it was probably the one thing I hated the most about having my own firm. But I had a friend, I did the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Businesses program 9 years ago, and she had a ton of staff. And she was like, honey, don't be afraid to let them go. You are protecting your culture and you need to keep tabs on that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I was getting myself, that pep talk that I needed. But if you just keep somebody on staff that doesn't do the majority of their work, or they have the wrong attitude, they're not aligned in your culture, what happens? It spreads. It spreads. And then other people are like, oh, I can get away with coming in late. Oh, I can get away with being rude to who knows who, and I can do whatever it is, right? They're all watching that. And so that's why you have to hire slow and fire fast. Now, it feels uncomfortable to do that, right? But the whole point is that once you find, of course, employment law is applied. I'm not an employment lawyer. But once you've documented and you know that this is where it's going, you have a performance improvement plan, et cetera. But ultimately, if you let the wrong person linger too long, then you're going to have problems. And that's going to corrode the rest of the culture. And then you're going to probably lose people that you didn't want to lose. And there you go, paying money for that whole high turnover problem, or the turnover problem. So it's important to have procedures in place, be wary of listening ears, paying attention to staff and what's going on. And for me, my office manager helps me with these. I mean, I'll be the one that does it, but if we have to. But at the same point, she's the one keeping tabs on things, because if you don't document it and you don't call things out for when there's a problem or there's a misalignment, then it'll go askew. So, and then it's also important to make sure you have all the tools in place to make sure you have a good culture. I once remember a friend telling me during the pandemic, she had the virtual people use one system to chat with each other and the in-person use another, or some other I don't know, whatever. It was really confusing to me. But what the point is that everyone, regardless of where they are in working for your team, they should be able to communicate the same way. So we have chats and emails, and everyone has a phone line. And I mean, it might seem simple, but but it really is important to make sure that everyone feels like they're integrated regardless of wherever they are. And now, I mean, just like we can work from wherever we want to, your team should be able to too. And that's why it's important to have the right tools, technology, communication that you've prepared for your team. So now we're going to do another activity as we're getting to the close. So now think to yourself, what's one cultural challenge in your firm that you would want to address? So just we'll give a minute. Think about it. And there could be more than one. Okay. Okay, we've got over here. There's one other cool thing that you guys reminded me about was the get it, want it, and the capacity to do it. And that's also in the EOS system. But you want to make sure you have the right people who get it. They want the position and have the ability and the capacity to do it. And I think if you have that along with having your culture and your vision and all these other things we're talking about, you're not going to have issues, or not that many. Go ahead.
Hello. So we don't have enough time to problem solve our challenges right here. But we decided that to take a picture of this slide, and we're going to bring it back to our leadership team. And we have a leadership retreat scheduled for next month. And so we want to make sure that we make this a focus, because we are experiencing some changes at the firm right now, some attrition. We're doing a lot of hiring, and we do feel like we can't pinpoint why people are leaving right now. And so we can't fix that until we get to that root cause. So we're going to take this back and take probably a few hours to do this activity.
Yeah, that's
just
true.
A few minutes.
I'm shortcutting the opportunity by giving you only a couple of minutes, seconds. Yeah, exactly. But at least we're getting the thoughts brewing, and yes. And one thing you said, anybody else want to feel free? The other thing it made me think about, you can always do an exit interview, but they don't always tell you the truth because they want to save face. They don't want to tell you everything because they're, it's a small community, right? Like legal community, they might want or someone in the office to be their reference, and who knows what. So I find that even though you do have an exit interview, it doesn't necessarily give you all the information you want, even though you're really wanting to get that. And you'd rather get it there than like on Glassdoor or something like that, right? Anybody else want to share? Okay, there's a hand over there. Yeah, and that's great. Take the picture, think about these things, unpack it when you get back, set some time to do it.
Hi, Ruby. Thanks for a great presentation. My name is Saja. I'm a fellow immigration lawyer. I was wondering what your advice is on working with remote contract attorneys. So sort of how would you encourage that sense of, I know you said, you treat VAs and contract attorneys as if they were staff, but they're still in a different region of the country, immigration being federal. And it feels like a challenge to have that same buy-in as regular employees who are coming in every day.
Yeah, I mean, it is true that contractors, that's the whole difference between contractors and employees in the traditional sense that employees, that's their full-time, usually full-time, part-time position, like that's their position. And then the contractor, by virtue of definition of contractor, depending on the labor laws if applicable, are more of a limited scope, and also they're very likely doing other work. But it's important to make sure that you use the same policies of finding the right people and communication and informing them of how interviewing them like you normally would for anyone else to make sure that they're culturally aligned. I think if you can have times, we've had a lot of success with the contract attorneys. I think it helps when you might see them maybe every once in a while in person or have a way to do that, but it doesn't have to be. And we have virtual assistants that I've never met in person, but have been working with us for 2 or 3 years already. But I think you just treat them in terms of finding the right cultural fit is the most important thing. And then a lot of communication and buy-in. But that is an issue, especially now I feel like now, before it was like full-time employees and that's sort of how we do things and you come in the office. And now it's like, I don't know who's working when, but it's somewhere on the schedule somewhere. and wherever they are. So does anybody else want to share any? We've got just a couple minutes left. We can also have any Q&A. Does anybody have anything else they want to share, or any another question or comment? Or it could be a success story. Keep inspiring us. Okay.
Hi, my name is Melina, and the problem that the attorney came up with, it was the virtual people, right? We talked about the virtual and versus the in-house. We're not challenging enough or be able to say, hey, there's a problem, I have a different idea, this is going to be better, right? For the firm when we have issues and when we have things that are going on and how the workflow goes. It happens to be that we were able to bring our virtual people to a ClioCon. So I was like, great, this is a great exercise. This is what the attorney thinks is happening, right? This is what's happening. And then she's here next to me. So we will have to had a little exercise in that last session where I asked, did you feel that why didn't you challenge that? And she's like, well, I did. I stated my opinion. But she said no. So then I stopped. Right? So then we were able to workflow. So the problem is not that they don't feel empowered enough to say, hey, there's something wrong. I think this is better. I have a better idea, because we have a lot of smart, beautiful women in our firm to be able to say what needs to happen and how the workflow is going to be better. The next step now is they're empowered enough, but now they need to be even more empowered to challenge the attorney and say, no, I really think this is the right way, right? So we'll take steps within the firm to create that empowerment for them to be able to challenge and create better workflows within the firm.
Thank you for sharing. And that's another reminder, with our virtual assistants, they're in other countries. So there's truly other cultures in play and how things are interpreted as well. And even just the language you use or how you see the world, I realize we have to sort of explain things, like even how the U.S. postal system works or something or doesn't work. But anyway, thank you for sharing that. And as well as in immigration, we're working with a lot of clients from a lot of different cultures. So I think about culture on a regular basis. Even my husband's from another country. So it's everywhere. Thinking about how do we communicate? And you might think well, why don't they do that? But it's because that's not how they saw the world, and that's not how they are. So I hope we had a nice journey and discussion. You've thought about what your core values are, your vision. You've thought a little bit about whether or not your firm is in alignment. And then we've also talked about some examples about how you can find better ways to create that alignment. And we gave you some different exercises you can take back to the firm. Do a little leadership retreat. We had a couple little nuggets. Hopefully you found a lot of value. We are at the top of the hour. And so if you want to stay connected, I've got my book, Power Up Your Practice, on Amazon, and my podcast. I'm always looking for great speakers and guests, called Power Up Your Practice. And I'm in Houston with Powers Law Group. And thank you so much. And it was fun. And I hope you saw a lot of value from today. Stay in touch.